As you all know very well, in addition to doing reviews on ordinary games, and not only, I create reviews on the order of Roblox, infested with bad ideas, and being stupidly a blueprint of the eponymous creation, which became popular, that as much as from this, to some creator would also creep the idea of repeating exactly the same success, adding a lot of character, and looming like a death penalty for having thought of embodying this at all, so that most Roblox players would play it. It was worth saying, or rather informing you, that most of all that Roblox games are soulless, squeezing money, with mediocre content that developers add, receiving in response not uniform criticism, but praise. I've been laughing for a long time with such a phenomenon as the world of dandy. A lot of people playing this reacting to criticism, like ragged dogs, being at the same time, small hamsters protecting the milking of donate with perpetual added skins. Most likely, when I start discussing the same for second, the flurry and tone of the storm will hang on to me the anger of school children, who will declare that the game is just like the world of dandy, is still in alpha testing, when those games do not go to testing, or to beta, to somehow speak of their progress, leaving such a signature for a year or a half, assuring that sooner or later the game will be released in full, well, or rather all the boiling waste from all the school children, when they realized that all this time they were spun in one place, justifying the slaves, that all this numerous time, it turns out they were lying. With the forsected this will not ride, until now creates poor in his design skins for the monster, not indicating his basic habits, creating his terrible essence, when there are such one vice in this game, small still than are generally monsters. The gameplay itself is the same callous in its likeness, creating a fake on the basis of Dead by Daylight, removing for the main chips, without which the old DBD could not do, which turned, literally, into the same game from Roblox. If, of course, you understand what I mean. The story will move slowly, almost repeating the formula of the released content in 4 season, when the game is not shibko and hurries to update, not improving in the same case the visual part of the game maps, on which you have to run from maniacs on the map. The maps themselves are too wide than the overview circle and thinking of the main Razraboff, adding already known characters, built in most of the game itself. The areas where you need to directly avoid the killer are extremely large, so that he does not miss you in them, starting the pursuit, when they have the same width as the cards in Murder Mystery 2. Even in DBD, there is no such thing, because the cards, being small, give God's help, to avoid the maniac because of their small size, as well as ease and the most elementary thing you could think of. Here the maniac will find you at any turn, forming a problem that you still need to somehow throw off your tail for repairing generators, which is like the main part of such games. By the way, if we talk about repairing generators, this is the best discovery made by his slaves for all the video in which I will be about this game to dissolve, simply because the minigame that you should go through is extremely exciting, rather than as such as sitting on the ass with a repeated press on the E. In DBD, everything is much scarcer with this mechanics, not unraveling it also and the developers for all these years, so that somehow felt those same goosebumps that appear from the fact that from one moment, you are able to make a mistake that will cost you very dearly. Here is a completely different game, where you should only match the knots with the right colors in the right order, completing the game, because here everything is tied to how much you will quickly do everything. In my opinion, the slaves just were guided by this principle, creating a simple gameplay element, so as not to finally bathe with what they already had on their hands. After all, the same essence of mechanics is extremely simple, as well as, let's be clear, the very essence of the characters of the slaves, who did not have the mind to create their own game, and not leading the process of creating a clone for Roblox. Here it is impossible to form a mistake, because of stupidity, since this snake will not reward you for failure, which will not be present here, looking at how this minigame is arranged. For it all depends only on how you quickly finish this minigame, bringing out the same release date for the game to yourself slaves, leveled in his pants in a double. If the game is still in alpha tested, what will be the main argument that will lead to the great age boogie, playing the main pozos of Roblox, including, it all depends on the randomness with which you can fall the complexity of the new puzzle. Why would the slaves of this game envy themselves? Because they were probably prepared to fall out with a warped consciousness, which immediately confirms the whole historical fact that no one would not have gone with such an idea, to create a game in which for slowness, or confusion, in which you are rewarded with nothing. Well, most of the slaves are like this, if not completely all. Well, thanks at least for the fact that they still decided to create at least something of their own that was worth considering when they created such a stranger as Forsaken, and not a clone of a more famous game that people are going to compare. After such a suck, testing the game in the demo stage, I want to clarify that at the stage when a maniac walks around the map, hinting about it with each of his confirming sounds, it only means that he himself will deprive you of these very legs, just because he will be chasing you without end. And this is still difficult, as well as trying to take the mental burden of one of the fucks that developed the game, trying to live like this, as well as somehow break away from the killer. For the players in this game are persistent buffaloes who will not calm down. I also mean that they do not play this game, that they will not stop when they make at least some respite. Although in the game it is possible to do this, but the same game takes away many other skills from life that the game does not allow you to use. This is something to think about. For example, you had to think about everything well before you go into this parachute. If a player playing for a maniac, an early caller, will not stop chasing the player to the very top in order to crash. This happens only in such cases. There is only one, like the brain of a person, who has a lot of people, in addition to these stupid Pidorocyanov, stretching any card they took from the Roblox workshop, creating the impression for the players of this twisted game that the earth is not really round, but flat, like the thought that pops up these Gondans damned in the head, stretching all the cards of their beta test, which are not furnished in the formal sense, most likely nothing. If from every angle the maniac will see you when escaping. Escape by this means from the game, looking at its perseverance, with the addition of an uneven dimensional balance, collapsing when a killer appears, who will once again cut players, turning everyone's life into torture. It also looks pathetic that the slaves to each daredevil, full of courage, give the opportunity to punch the maniac on the back of the head. Only it was worth such advice not to give the bait of the main slaves, who saw the future, that he already decided to break away from this in full on the pussy of his pussy. Maybe if not for this, he would have become a good person. No, but the meaning of this corporate horror. If the game directly, as in the years of Zero, gives everyone the opportunity to defend, any player to fight back, when such an element on the contrary gives less adrenaline, which you get from a horror movie, it is not terrible that you still need to approach the monster in order to give him a muzzle with a stick. Scary is how you only run away from him, building a horror on this, because helplessness helps to feel fear in this case, or in the place that this sprayed mess is full of various different ideas, not going to match the same scarecrow who tried to create such slaves, but they did not succeed. And from this they all had to accept that the best thing that they all get is to shit with all their strength, and put such poop right in their mouths, for that matter. This defense is not only that, as the main part of the game, without which there is nowhere, even probably, in the hordes consisting of shit, which is the game itself, catching up with such and more. So this fucking dog, which is this mechanic, works for a couple of seconds, slowing down the killer, but not the neutrons of the main developer, begging the game to release faster, so that they quickly forget about it. Well, perhaps the main slave just did it, rushing the rest of the slaves already with another masterpiece. But let's not talk about it. Such a function opens, for gaining a certain level by the player, when he allows himself to buy a character capable, if not in the face then in the mouth, like chocolate danger masters hiding under the beds of the slaves. And it works for a moment, when the maniac will have time to climb in order to register too for such movies, which are not worth anything, and the same game cramming by the player, who saved himself a level, opening a character who knows how to do this, so that after that he will be upset, as from the frightening music in this game, provoking you only shed a tear, from the created idiotic background, but not frightening melody, turn on only when you would give a Daru from a maniac. Music turns on from the appearance of a killer, from which I am undoubtedly glad that it at least started, given that this is still an alpha test. However, how should she shiver a person who is in a situation in which a killer walks right next to you, if she is not terrible, but without a tower kid? That's what it was about when they discussed that guys are more risky than girls, from which you want not to attribute yourself to the gender that is. Fuck, these fuckers risk not what to think before releasing this game, but to pick up for it at least a better musical accompaniment. The honorary title can be better weighed on any shit, just not on what calls itself a game for second, not coping even with the task, demanding that you be scared not from the implementation curve of these skewed assholes at least. I want to stretch the video, I will. For Forces and for me served as an example of stretching any poboni, even cards inside the game, which the slaves did this issue. In general, it is worth mentioning that any horror movie played on that music, creating a terrible hearing of any ending of the melody, creating for these films people who approach this with full, developed skills. However, fuck all the languages of music there, if in terms of mechanics, the game is also cut off than the murderers, created in this place, having a healthy and rich life in their sleeve, than the slaves of this streaking diarrhea. I lead to the fact that the range of possibilities of the maniac is huge, which reaches the edges, using from their pretenses also the slaves, which is their trump card, the main broken weapon, both internally and externally. The maniac has an extremely clear opportunity, which he is able to use, talking about himself as a radar, highlighting players, and their fifth point, rushing straight from the ass, shielding from such injustice, as well as many ways to kill a player, so that he spent his laurels in the lobby, emphasizing any maniac with clouds of abilities, and doing that attract to any surviving person who will be considered such, after knocking out the game, fuck, because it is comparable to any painful epidemic. Over the ability of a killer, garbage is rash, writing a tombstone in your name, predicting the future that you will not escape from a maniac, since the one, as previously mentioned, will be until the end of time. Even the extinction of the game, you chase a broken leg, and not your own, but yours, fuck. As a result, the player only has to wander around the map, until where he does not beat his feet, if the game forces you to perform it, with such a plus as looking for different treatment devices, except for autism, which is such a quick need to find faggots sitting in their basement. This is still half the trouble, because the players will not be engaged in repairing the generator, or rather, a small number will do it, which will want to finish the game as soon as possible, in order to celebrate the victory over the killer on the spawn. Therefore, as a solution, they find an option for themselves to wait until the time runs out, for which, bitch, they will be interrupted by a maniac. Only about this, they do not think, and do not reflect. What can be more loyal than doing their work? You should be lucky if one of the players bother to do their job together with the rest, which are all the brain cells that are not withered from the influence of the game, forcing them to do their job, so that everyone waits not fucking fucked up. In addition, even time is not enough to refuel these generators alone, since you came to mind the idea of these tasks to perform, which is basically the main influential decisions on the game. I doubt that 4 minutes is enough not to complete the round, but to create the game to the developers who did it in all these hours of development, not hovering over other aspects of the game, creating an ugly pop clone of DBD, slipping into the order of today. And this is not even a joke, then I would like to consider it. Fucking. And to all this tide of frightening, looming lorry, which with each such game will be similar in its tempimeters to the IQ of the slaves, who made, correcting such a urine-soaked stupidity of the developer's cancer. About this game, the slaves released an arch that will be remembered as that in their youth people, who spent their time only rummaged in shit, just because the very mystery that created its slaves ends in nothing if you equate it with common sense. And this generally makes itself felt. I'm still talking about for second. Imagine such a picture, because this was left, so that the most ridiculous thieves spizzed Elliot, which will be considered as rewarded with work. That slaves, like a secret letter of his fucked up, write in the icon that there is no secret here, when the player who guessed the riddle of his favorite game, in which he is more excited than in life, just spent the time of his life, so that the bitch has nothing to get except praise. I am not so angry from this, because I did not have to go through it. It is necessary to pity exactly the one who has come to reason to do this. This person will regret until the end of his days.
Oh, that's great you graduated from the quest. It's really cool, what can I say? But I don't have anything for you yet. Leave and come there in a year.
So the whole secret background is taken again from DBD, where they also represent such an extremely mysterious figure that controls everyone and everything, only with altered details, which the slaves indicate that Jason Voorhees beat some schoolboy there who came to play his schma game at 3 in the morning. How does this have to do with the game element, if all these details in the lorry do not reveal? Just the same, in the game, a fucking mouth? The game is a tricky heat for the brain, which should be protected from such nonsense, because all the components that are at the moment stupidly do not work, provoking people only burning ass from boiling visor. Well, I did not spend so much time, and I will not only find you next time, but also what will be done by Absur.